Welcome to the Mismatch. I'm Chris Vernon, and joining me as he does every week from TheRinger.com is Dave Jacoby. Jacoby!
What a week for the Memphis Grizzlies and the National Basketball Association. What a week for the Grizzlies. Last time we spoke, we were together celebrating the Knicks' dominance over your Grizzlies. And here we are, just over 48 hours later, almost exactly 72 hours later, I should say. And we are celebrating your Grizzlies after burying them just 3 days ago.
A veteran in the locker room always says, never get too high, never get too low. And they also, one of the common tropes is you're always one game away from the attitudes changing about everything. I went to a basketball
cliches
game.
Aside, you were pretty low on Tuesday morning. You were pretty low. You were pretty low.
I mean, they lost by 40.
39.
Was at a game last night. This was probably the best basketball game I have been to this season. And for those of you that saw it on TNT last night, Memphis ended up winning 120-119. They ended the game on a 13-4 run. And little backstory on this. The Houston Rockets were 3-0 against Memphis this year. The reason that this is significant is because as the standings look and have looked for some amount of time, those have been the two teams that have been lodged behind Oklahoma City. So if they were able to get past their first round opponents, they would be on a collision course to meet each other. The first game was a bloodbath, second game of the season. The last two were certainly more significant, a game in Memphis and a game in Houston that both went down to last possessions of the game. Houston made the plays, Memphis did not. And then you have last night, and you fast forward to this run that takes place by the Grizzlies. They're down to the end of the game. There's 13 seconds left in the game. They get the stop they have to get because they are down by one in the game. Now, there's a lot that's happened before this, but we're just going to fast forward to this point. Yeah. And at that point, a rebound comes off. Jalen Wells is streaking down the court.
It's a Triple J tap to Jalen, right?
Right. Streaking down the court to get up. This would move the Grizzlies up by 1 point. And then, now, I did not have to work last night because the game is on TNT. The game's on TNT.
Right.
So we can't run side by side. I'm just there. So I don't have any. If you saw it last night, I tweeted out, what are they saying on TV? Because in the arena, it's hard for me to describe this. It is absolute chaos.
You don't get replays.
Nobody has any idea what is going on.
Before we hear from you, let's hear what you didn't hear, which was TNT's call of this very bizarre final 15 seconds.
Crossover, puts up a three. No! Rebound by Wells. Here they go, open lane. And a whistle, and a whistle, and a whistle will not count.
And Taylor Jenkins is upset because he's telling them he did not call a timeout, and Wells had a wide open layup.
Okay. Before we get to you and your experience in the arena, I just want to say Taylor Jenkins is upset is the understatement of the century.
Oh, my gosh.
Taylor Jenkins was way upset, does not begin to explain what Taylor Jenkins did. And I do want to give a shout to the referees who made a mistake and did not compound the mistake by giving Jenkins the technical foul that he deserved. He deserved one, but I think the ref realized that he himself made a mistake, which led to the Taylor Jenkins outburst, which I want to say that was a good move by the ref to acknowledge that he was wrong and to not give Jenkins a tech. But continue.
So I'm going to give you a little context on this. And the reason that was so much more egregious and ironic than it normally would have been. Now, again, this is all chaos, and I don't expect anybody to have an awareness of this. But if you go back, the second game that these two teams played, all right, Houston versus Memphis, it comes down to the very end of the game. Memphis is down by 3, And Taylor Jenkins, while they are in transition, calls a timeout. After he calls a timeout, Desmond Bane hits a three. He's obviously depressed. The fans are depressed. The team is depressed. They come out of the timeout, and Houston fouls immediately. Therefore,
let me call a timeout on this, though, because I watched that game live, as you did. Bane went into the shooting motion after the whistle was blown.
Correct.
Which I think people lose sight of. It's not like a Will Hardy, Colin Sexton situation where he was like mid-gather and Jenkins called a timeout. Jenkins called a timeout, Bane heard the whistle, and then launched like a 28-footer after the whistle.
But, that notwithstanding, it was a horrible timeout to take because it gave them the opportunity to foul you rather than you.
And strategize to be in a huddle in a dead ball situation and say, this is how we're going to approach this possession instead of yelling across the court while the crowd's going crazy trying to communicate to your team.
So in one of the shortest press conferences ever after the game that night, Taylor Jenkins comes out and says, it was my fault. I shouldn't have called the timeout. I will be better. We've got to go back to work. And he just took all the blame, walked into the locker room, told the players, it's not on you. This one's on me. And so that was a big deal and obviously created a tremendous amount of conversation. It's a very high leverage game that went down to the last possession. The coach screwed up. So
that was the topic of conversation the next day.
For sure.
Because I watched it and I was like, well, Bane shot the ball after the whistle, so whatever. But that was the discussion from that game. As I complain about all the time, people really only talk about the last couple of possessions. And the discussion after that game was Taylor Jenkins ruined the game for the Grizzlies.
Of course. So now, exact same situation. He doesn't call timeout, but they give him a timeout. So that is the context for, it's literally the same team, same situation. At this point, that's all going through your head. That when something that catastrophic has happened to you before, you're like, next time, that ain't happening. Exactly. And so you don't call timeout, and yet the ref is premeditating that you would be calling a timeout. So I
got to watch the replays. Not only is he not calling a timeout, he looks like a third base coach waving someone into home. He's not just not calling a timeout. He's using his right arm like a third base coach, be like, push, push, push. And I think the ref called the timeout because there's a group of Grizzlies and Rockets around midcourt that, I talk about this all the time. When you watch thousands of NBA games, you get used to the sort of rhythm of it. And the rhythm of the game tells the players that this is a natural timeout situation. It's really like a 50-50 call by the coach. But some of the players' body language sort of stopped at half court, anticipating a timeout. I think the ref saw that and just, in a huge mistake, blew the whistle and awarded a timeout that didn't exist.
So all's well that ends well. Jaren Jackson Jr. gets the ball. He goes at Dylan Brooks. He gets fouled. He makes both free throws. Grizzlies get a stop on the other end. But the last two possessions for Houston, and I don't want to criticize too much because you never know what's drawn up in the huddle.
There's stuff to discuss here. There's stuff to discuss here.
I didn't watch Udoka's post-game press conference, but I will say you always view things through the prism of, if you are the opposing team, what do you want to happen on this? And the idea that Fred VanVleet was taking fadeaway three-pointers while big guys have switched on to him, instead of Amen Thompson, who we just saw win a game for them against Boston by getting to a spot and hitting a shot. We've seen Jalen Green be able to create his own shot. Shouts to, if it's his choice, shouts to Udoka. If it's his choice, shouts to VanVleet. I have no idea how the VanVleet ISO offense was down the stretch.
That was a play that was drawn up for Amen Thompson to operate from the right wing. That play was drawn up for Amen Thompson to get the ball on the right wing and drive to the basket. And guess who knew that? The Memphis Grizzlies. And guess what they did? They said, you know what? We've also watched Amen Thompson and his star turn in the last 10 days. We've seen this movie. We know how that movie ends. Let's cut off him driving both right and left from the right wing and make him throw it back to VanVleet, will live or die by a contested Van Vliet 3-point shot to win the game. Like, that's kind of where it went. I thought the Grizzlies played good defense on that rather than a sort of like poor planning or strategy on the Rockets' part.
Great basketball game for sure. Before the basketball games got underway, tremendous amount of conversation around the NBA about the NBA All-Stars being announced. Now, this is always going to elicit a ton of conversation that we're always going to be talking about snubs, but I thought this year was especially interesting. I don't know what your experience was like, but, and this is not after the fact, in the moment as they are passing around the envelopes and they are opening them, I was absolutely stunned when they said James Harden. I was like, what? I didn't even consider that. And maybe I'm crazy here. But when they announced James Harden, I was like, what? And then the one that they didn't announce, and this is in the moment watching it. This is not after everybody comes out with their list or I read all the discussion. In the moment, I could not believe Sabonis' name was not called, because I've been reading all this stuff about how, like, no one has had this kind of season since Wilt Chamberlain. You know, Sacramento has a top 5 offense when he's on the court, a bottom 2 offense when he's off the court. And he's like, he never has a bad game. It's always just a matter of how good. And we have been effusive in our praise on this podcast about Sabonis. So he was the one right off the bat that I was surprised by. And then obviously on the Eastern side, when Trae Young wasn't announced, the announcers made a deal out of it. And so obviously that was going to immediately make me perk up. But tell me about the experience of when you saw who was announced, the All-Star reserves last night, as we already knew who the starters were. What'd you think?
Here's my experience. We all saw the fan voting.
Yep.
And I have a couple things with All-Stars, right? When we talk about snubs. Number one, I do play by the rules that you have to take someone out of the All-Star team if someone is truly snubbed. You have to feel like they should replace X player if they're truly snubbed. And there are some borderline calls, but in my personal opinion, there are not obvious snubs this season, right? We can go through the details later, but I'll say this. My experience overall was this. Guess what? The coaches and the media and the players care a lot more about team success than the fans do. And that, to me, is an indicator why Sabonis is not an all-star, why Trae Young is not an all-star, and really why LaMelo Ball is not an all-star.
Okay, but that to me, I'm sorry, Jacoby, that is surface level baloney, because why are the Clippers good? We've talked about it 1,000 times. Because they're an amazing defense. Yes. And they are an amazing defense despite James Harden. So don't give me that the Clippers team success should be the reason that this guy should be an all-star when their success is based upon the fact that they have a great defense, of which he is not the driver.
Who should take James Harden's spot?
Sabonis. It's easy.
Okay. Look at the team success of those two teams. The best player on Sabonis' team doesn't want to play there. They've changed the coach. Okay, they're spiraling towards worse than mediocrity. That
also,
team is not successful.
I would have taken Sabonis or Kyrie Irving over James Harden. This is not an all-star season for James Harden. I'm sorry. It's not.
I think that's fair. That's totally fair to say. It's totally fair. It's not an all-star season. But I think it's also fair to recognize there is no one left out that obviously needs to be in Harden's place. You can make a Sabonis case. You can make a Sabonis case over Sengun. I get that. But I just feel like based on the results, the media players and coaches weight the team success more than the fans do. And one thing I want to say this, as a LaMelo Ball guy, I've been a LaMelo fan since he was like 14, 15 years old. I don't think he deserves to be an all-star over Tyler Hero, but we can all agree on this. Having LaMelo Ball in the all-star game makes the all-star game more fun to watch. He is the perfect all-star game player. He's absolutely perfect.
And look, the same thing is true of Trae Young, who is averaging 23 points, 11 assists, and 3 rebounds. He's number 1 in the NBA in total assists. He's number 1 in the NBA in assists per game. He's number 1 in the NBA in points, assists, double-doubles. Like, he has got the numbers. There's no way around that. Trae Young has got the numbers. And last night, Trae Young, I like when players acknowledge that they're mad about something. And him putting out that they don't need to call it snubbed anymore. They need to call it trade. I mean, I love him playing the villain anyway.
Yeah.
But putting that out there and then saying he's sorry to his fans. All right, talk soon. I mean, the whole thing was I don't act like it doesn't bother you, because we know it bothers you, right?
Yeah.
And not only does he not act like it doesn't bother him, he says that we should change the lexicon in which we speak about these things.
Well, I have bad news for Trae. Trae is a really cool first name, but being like this needs to be called trade moving forward. It's like, trade is already a verb that we use in the NBA, Trae. It just doesn't work. It does not work whatsoever. But not only do we have that, we have some sound from your friend Devin Booker, who was not really like that much in the All-Star conversation. And here's what he had to say.
Your reaction hurt the news. Y'all must be disappointed. I mean, did it hurt not to be included in that bunch?
It was always a goal of mine. But it just reproves the point that the NBA is different than the game that I fell in love with at the beginning. Of all the best players in the All-Star game, growing up watching that. And now it's an entertainment, drama, political field league. But we're a part of it now, so it pays well, so I guess we should be quiet about it.
Do you think the process, how would you alter the process?
Put the best players in the game. Yeah.
Chris, you know what? This is not the league that he fell in love with when the best players played in the All-Star game. This is a league full of entertainment, drama, and politics. Oh, no. People are talking about ratings. But Devin Booker just said this is not the NBA that he fell in love with when the best players played in the All-Star game. First of all, I love entertainment, drama, and politics. So, that's not really a knock to me. But also, is Devin Booker an all-star in your opinion?
No.
No. No.
I
didn't even, why are we even putting microphones in front of this guy and treating him like he's a snub? Because he's not.
Well, and the other thing is, let's just say Devin Booker's 28 years old, okay? So let's go back and we'll say, when I was growing up and I was in love with the NBA, that's not the NBA I loved, right? So let's go back to when he was, I don't know, 12 years old, 11 years old, right? So I'll just pick a random one. We'll go to the 2008 NBA All-Star game when he watched Carlos Boozer and he watched David West and he watched Caron Butler and he watched Richard Hamilton.
They were great at that time, though. Those are good years for them.
He watched Richard Hamilton and Antoine Jameson, and I mean, come on. There's always going to be guys that make the team and guys that don't make the team, and it's not like you don't just get in because, hey, he's one of the best players in the NBA. Okay, so he should be in the it's whoever's having the best season.
Yeah, if there was an expansion draft, I would take Devin Booker over James Harden. If I'm making the All-Star team, I would take James Harden over Devin Booker.
So what's interesting about this year is there are, by my count, 11 guys that were on the All-Star team last year that are not on this year. So that's a big turnover, right?
I think injury has a lot to do with that.
For sure, injury has a lot to do with it, right? But you do wonder how many of these guys would still be All-Stars if all of these guys were available. Now, some of them do not have their team just wasn't as good this year, or they're not having as good of seasons. Tyrese Halliburton, Joel Embiid, Tyrese Maxey, Trae Young, Paolo Banchero, Scotty Barnes, Julius Randle,
Oh, please.
Bam Adebayo, Devin Booker, Paul George, and Kawhi Leonard. Those 11 guys were all-stars 1 year ago and
Is
are
Luka not on the list?
Luka's in this. I mean, he's listed. He's going to be replaced, but he is listed as an all-star, right?
Yeah.
These are guys that are not, right, that were rostered last year and now are not on the all-star roster for this year. So kind of interesting, honestly.
Yeah. Not too many of those guys have had a healthy season.
Not too many. You're right.
My guy, Scotty Barnes.
Well, and Maxey, who is, we will get to in a little bit. All right. Let's get to the team that we loved this week. I'm going to start off with, obviously, your beloved New York Knicks.
God,
how could
they're
I
so
not?
good.
I mean, look, I didn't love them much on Monday night, but then the reason that they are making my list is because I had the enjoyable experience on Wednesday night
Me too.
of settling in and watching them play against the Denver Nuggets.
Yeah,
and
me
I
too.
said, you know, my experience at Madison Square Garden was a miserable one on Monday night. But if you follow it up and you go ahead and take care of business against the Nuggets, you know, in the end, they all just go in loss columns, right? Sometimes they're by 10, sometimes they're by 1, sometimes they're by 40. But at least it's going to show me, like, you're just playing at a high level. A buzzsaw was run into, and that's that. And then watching them, and especially after they had gotten down in that third quarter, and Brunson just go on an absolute tear and be able to get to every spot he wanted to on the court, Anunoby knocking down corner threes. They are playing super high-level basketball right now, and what a week. I mean, to play the 3rd and 4th seeds, respectively, in the Western Conference and bury both of them within a few days' time, mega impressive. And so,
Verno, let me tell you something, buddy.
Let me hear.
I'm sure, you're the Grizzlies guy. Spent a lot of time in that suit, so you're not very familiar with the Knicks' upcoming schedule. But they've got a national TV game against the Lakers Saturday, and they've played the 3rd and 4th best teams in the Western Conference. The night before our next podcast, the New York Knickerbockers will be hosting the Houston Rockets. If they beat the Lakers and the Rockets on Tuesday, I'm declaring the New York Knicks as the new number 2 seed in the Western Conference.
I think it's fair.
I am. They're now the number 2 seed in the Western Conference. So just a teaser for Tuesday's episode. If you're a Mismatch listener, if they beat the Lakers and the Rockets, I am declaring the Knicks the number 2 seed in the Western Conference.
Fair enough.
Good. Here's a team that I love this week. And I don't love this team in general. I'm doing a lot of respecting the week that you've had, awards this week. On Monday, this team beat the Jazz. Okay. Whatever. Everybody beats the Jazz. When I watch the Jazz, I'm looking at them, I'm like, this team's pretty good. I'm like, John Collins, Colin Sexton, Kessler Walker.
No.
And I'm like, this is they're
Kessler Walker Kessler.
Walker Kessler, whatever the hell his name is.
Whatever his name is.
I always call him Kessler Walker. I've been doing that since college.
They stink, but I will give Utah credit.
They just have lineups where you're like, you watch the Nets, you're like, who are these guys?
And they also actually run plays. Some of these teams that are the rat teams in the NBA, I'll get to mine in a little bit, but there are some of the dregs that just, you're like, what is the point here? You don't even run plays. At least Utah has some structure.
So they beat this team I'm talking about beat the Jazz on Monday, but Wednesday night, they were hosting the Oklahoma City Thunder. And of course, I'm talking about the Warriors. And this was a loss. They're losing the entire first half. They're coasting towards a loss. And this is after the whole, we're not going to mortgage the future to bring in a star. And our guy, Kevin O'Connor, is reporting that the Warriors, quote, My league sources confirm these hesitations, revealing Curry himself has reservations about Butler's fit in the Warriors' locker room, a sentiment shared by head coach Steve Kerr. Their worries stem from Butler's tumultuous history with the previous teams. That is former mismatcher Kevin O'Connor basically saying, we can't have Butler and Draymond on the same team. We're not going to mortgage the future. Basically them being like, this is our team, and our team is headed for the play-in. But they hosted the Thunder. Steph was 1 for 7 at halftime. They held Shai Gilgeous-Alexander to 38 points at the half. It was a wrap. It was over. In the second half, the Warriors look great. They're shutting down on defense. Andrew Wiggins looks like the number 1 pick. Andrew Wiggins, like he's realizing all that potential from 11 years ago. And Wiggins had 27. He was 10 for 17 from the floor. He made tons of big shots. And it's a close game down at the end. And it is Gary Payton III dunking on Isaiah Hartenstein's face as a dagger bucket to bring the Warriors a win against the Thunder. And I can't tell if this sort of a win is nothing, or if this sort of win is we don't need a star, or if this sort of win is we're good enough, we do need a star to go for a run. I don't know how significant this win is over what many consider to be the best team in the NBA. After losing the first half and winning the second half, there could be no implications moving forward, but it felt significant enough for me to say this team that has been a disappointment had a great week. They're the team I love this week.
2 things on this game that you mentioned about the Warriors beating the Thunder. The first of which, I told you, I was settled in and I was enjoying the NBA and I was flipping around from game to game
Great
that night.
Verno. Great Wednesday for Verno.
And as the game between the Knicks and the Nuggets was going on, I had an awareness that Draymond Green is giving his analysis about what it takes to win.
Oh, that's right.
And it's
I'm so glad you brought this up.
And all the responses were, bro, you have a game in 30 minutes.
Yeah, he was basically, if you didn't see it, he was saying he was watching the Knicks and Nuggets play, and he was watching Cat front Jokic.
Right.
And he was doing some Draymond loves to pull this I'm a champion, I've been in big moments, and you haven't card. Then he pulls it then, and he's like, oh, you're showing weakness. If you have to front him, what's it going to be like in a big game? You sort of showed it. You've given him his dominance. You're the beta dog in the
mental.
Pack. And Nikola Jokic is the alpha dog. You're a weak cat. You can't handle this. And then he goes out and loses and beats the. Oh wait, did he even play against the Thunder?
It was basically like, you might win the battle, but you're losing the war of the mental. You're losing the mental war that is taking place against Nikola Jokic, Cat. And so it's like, okay, dude. By the way, Cat's team beat Jokic last year in the playoffs.
It's a great point.
And he was great.
Point.
And he was great.
He was the best defender against Jokic in the playoffs, literally ever.
Right. So anyways, the second thing is, and this has happened a few times recently, where we have seen these, Shai Gilgeous-Alexander has these monster nights, but they have had these odd losses.
He's a 54 and a 52, both in losses. And Draymond did not play in that game. So that gives him a little bit of reason to tweet if he's not getting ready for the game or whatever.
Fair enough. This is what I'll say. I wonder if, and this will be.
Oh, I love this.
This is
Are
something
you going anti-Thunder here?
No.
Oh, Verno, I thought you were brewing up a hot one.
No. This is what I'm saying. It's something to think about as time goes on. In the same way that Nikola Jokic, as we know, there's a choice that has to be made when you are playing against them, and we have seen that choice made over and over again in the playoffs. A choice that Eric Spoelstra once upon a time, fired back at reporters for, you don't get it, whatever. And people would say, look, is there times where you just decide, hey, this guy, go get yours, but none of these other guys are going to get credit. You're not making everybody else great, right? We're making a choice here, and we're just going to say, fine, if you want to score 45? You want to score 50? Have at it. But what's not going to happen is you having 15 assists, you having 16 assists. You don't get to make it. And in the same way that Jokic creates for everybody on his team, Gilgeous-Alexander is the engine. He's the one. Like, there's not a ton of shot creators. And so all I'm saying is we got to think about this, especially as we get to the highest level of basketball. And I do wonder, because they don't lose very often, and yet you have seen them lose a couple times where he's had these crazy nights, that if we are getting to the point where teams are now going to say, and especially when it gets to that highest level, just say, score 50. Go ahead. But Kason Wallace, you're being face guarded, and this guy's not doing this, and you don't get to roll to the basket, Hartenstein. And like, we're not giving the extra attention. We're not giving the extra attention to you, because what happens is you always make the right play. And in the same way that Gilgeous-Alexander always makes the right play is the same way that Jokic always makes the right play. And then it gets everybody else. And so if Lou Dort wants to score, Lou Dort's going to have to create his own basket. And if Kason Wallace wants to score, he's going to have to create his own basket. And if Wiggins wants to score, he's going to have to create his own basket. And if go on down the roster, right? But what's not going to happen is that Gilgeous-Alexander gets to simultaneously be great individually and make the collective great.
Yeah.
And so it's just something for us to stow away as you get to the playoffs, because I wouldn't be surprised if that is a choice that is made, and that speaks to his greatness and the choice that teams consistently have to make when it comes to Jokic, when it gets to, as I said, the highest levels.
And Jokic I think those are two different discussions. I think that Jokic has proven time and time again that you can double him and get the ball out of his hands and he'll carve you up. Or you can leave him alone and say, go ahead and score 40, but you're not going to have 20 assists and sort of run the offense. And he can do that too. But I think with SGA and this Thunder team, while they are, in my consideration, the best team currently in the regular season in the NBA, it doesn't mean that they are without faults. And when I forget who it was against, it was a good team. It was against the Cavs or somebody, when they didn't have SGA and J-Dub was sort of like handed the keys to the car, and it didn't go well. And I think that if there's one thing to say about the Thunder is not only do they not have a true sort of like get yourself a bucket second guy, they don't have a ton of just like knockdown 3-point shooters that if we do get the ball out of SGA's hands, we have a counter for that.
No, that's not true.
Who? Isaiah Joe?
No, those guys do knock down threes. I mean, sometimes it's been Wiggins, sometimes it's been Dort's turned into a guy that knocks down. Now the question is,
not concerned.
The question
about
is,
them. I'll take
are
that
those
option.
guys going to knock down their 40% from three when it comes playoff time? That's the question.
Yes,
right. That's the question.
I would push back and say that the Thunder, they do sort of lack the knockdown shooting that would help them. I'm not concerned about Kendrick shooting threes. Even Isaiah Joe, who's like a shooter. I'm like, all right, that's better than SGA shooting a 15-footer.
Team that I loathe this week. I mean, I told you I had a great experience on Wednesday night just settling in watching games. So there's 2 games that started early. There's really 3 games that started early. So I watched Beef Stew go crazy against the Pacers, right? That was going on. You had the Knicks game going on. And then for whatever reason, as I was flipping through League Pass, I land on Raptors Wizards, and I'm like,
why?
I need to see some of this. I need to see some of this just so I could say I saw this. And I texted my buddies and I said, I would never encourage you to turn this on. I said, but this is absolutely mesmerizing. Jacoby, it was 8 minutes into the game. This is why I couldn't take my eyes off it. It was that bad. I'm like, I feel like I might see history. I feel like I might see history here because it is 8 minutes into the game and they have 4 points.
The Wizards have 4 points, 8 minutes in the game?
Go look.
How'd they get them? How'd they
go
score?
Go look at Wednesday night. Go look at Wednesday night. Anybody can go look this up.
But this is literally like the coldest team in the NBA against the hottest team in the NBA, the Toronto Raptors.
They had 4 points in the first 8 minutes of the game, and I'm like, bro, please land on 4. Like this is, and then they ended up scoring a bunch in the last like 4 minutes to make it look not as bad. But I promise you, the first 8 minutes, and I'm like, this is a mockery of the game. Truly a mockery of the game.
You know what? That's a great point, Verno. Everyone's like, oh, they shoot too many threes and they all play offense alike, and that's why the ratings are down. The ratings are down because of the Washington Wizards.
Look, they lost by 38 to the Lakers last night. They are 6-41. That's their record right now.
They've lost 16 in a row, bro.
And Sean Grandy, the play-by-play voice for the Boston Celtics, tweeted out this chart, and he said, remember, there have been nearly 2,000 NBA team seasons. And he posted the worst scoring differential in NBA history. Your 2025 Washington Wizards are now number 1.
Yes!
At minus 15.23.
Good job, Wizards.
Ahead of what you would think was an unbreakable record, especially given the talent level of players today. The 1993 Dallas Mavericks lost by an average margin of 15.2 points per game. After last night's 38-point drubbing at the hands of the Los Angeles Lakers, the Washington Wizards are now minus 15.23, ahead of the 93 Dallas Mavericks.
Gross.
They are, statistically right now, the worst team ever.
I mean, that's great. I mean, it was one thing to hear Devin Booker be like, I wish it was the best players, and assuming he's talking about himself being one of the best players, but to hear Jordan Poole say that he's an all-star this year, was he serious? He literally was like, yeah, I'm an all-star. Okay. He said that.
All right. They're 6-41.
Like, it's one thing to be like, I'm averaging 20 points, but to be on the worst team, not just in the league, but like historically terrible, and then speaking to a microphone saying that you need to be an all-star it's the type of delusion and irrational self-confidence that I really wish I had. Because when Jordan Poole looks at that microphone and says, I am an all-star, he really believes it. He really does.
I'm going to tell you the only thing that's good that comes out of the Washington Wizards being this terrible, and I know this because I have some people I know that work there, and so they've taken care of me in the past. So it doesn't. I don't get happy talking about how terrible they are, but look, everybody knows. I would put them up. I think they're at the very, very top. As someone who is a bobblehead guy.
Oh, okay. Bobblehead guy?
Oh, their bobbleheads are.
I'm not.
I mean, because when you're that bad, your bobblehead schedule has to be amazing. I have gotten sent those by friends in Washington, and I have the Kuzma sweater one with the long sweater.
Oh, yeah. You know, that guy, yeah.
Oh, just recently, I have gotten Francis Tiafoe, the tennis player. They did a Francis Tiafoe. I have a Pusha T. I think.
I love Pusha T.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, do you know what you're going to get next?
Hold on a second.
Do you know what you're getting next? While Verno gets up from the chair, as he often does to go gather something, I will say the next great bobblehead coming out of the metropolitan D.C. area for the Washington Wizards will be Jordan Poole's cat. Jordan Poole's cat will be the next great bobblehead. It'll be Jordan Poole stroking a cat like the Godfather.
So they have like this DMV bobblehead series. I don't know who they've had this year, but I know from last year. Look, this is Francis Tiafoe.
Okay. Sure. DMV
Why
great.
not?
Didn't know he was from there, but sure.
Prize possession.
And then the Pusha T bobblehead.
The Pusha T bobblehead. Welcome to Virginia. Virginia is for
I just feel like Pusha T doesn't get enough credit. Like like Kendrick Lamar like is doing the Super Bowl and had this huge year and it's going to win Grammys or whatever because he took out Drake. But Pusha T was like, I did this first.
He did that first. Anyways, that's the only good thing that comes out of the Wizards being terrible is that they, if you're going to get people in the stands, you better give away amazing bobbleheads. And they do that. I can imagine their marketing meetings are like that. Like, guys, how are we going to get people?
No, the president of basketball operations is in the bobblehead meeting being like, this is the most important thing this season.
This is it.
The bobblehead program.
That's it.
Can we get Jordan Poole's cat? All right, team I loathe this week, and this is not a team that I truly loathe. I watched them a lot on League Pass. I logged a lot of minutes watching them, but one of the reasons I loathe this team is because I think that we've done a decent job of picking some breakout teams during the preseason, like the Cavs, pat ourselves in the back. The Rockets, pat ourselves in the back. We might have missed it with this one. I expected a lot more from the Atlanta Hawks this season. Now, I do want to preface it by saying—
You missed this one. I didn't miss this one.
One of the reasons that I loathe this team is because they lost Jalen Johnson to the season for injury. He was having such a great season. He was becoming a household name. He was crossing over from like basketball nerds that know the league really well, that love him, to like guys on my rec league team being like, what about this Jalen Johnson guy in Atlanta? And I was very happy about that. And that sort of tanked their season. And they beat the Cavs famously. Remember that? Beat them a couple times. They beat the Celtics twice in Boston. And they did so on January 18th. Since then, they've lost to the Knicks, the Pistons, the Raptors again, the Wolves, the Rockets, and last night they lost to the Cavs. Now, in the Hawks' defense, those are good teams. They were probably favored to lose 5 of those 7 games.
You can't ding them on that. Look, the Johnson thing killed them. It killed them.
Listen, that's one of the reasons I loathe this team this week is because their season is basically shot. It's shot. Maybe a play-in loss, something they're very familiar with. But like it's I loathe this team because I love this team so much. And now I'm looking at them and I just don't see a way that they climb out of this hole.
It'd be interesting to see. There's already word of them possibly doing the sell-off. Capella's name has always come up.
Well, Capella, but like it's not like they're trading Trae Young. You know what I mean? Like it is.
No, I think you look at it and you go,
they're
hey,
a crossword. They're a fork in the road franchise.
Bogdanovich is one that might have some suitors elsewhere.
Oh, he's gone. They didn't play him a couple nights ago.
Right. And so now, I mean, I think you're looking at it, you go, all right, we got Trae, we've got Dyson Daniels, and we got Jalen Johnson. And the rest of it is disposable. Outside, maybe Hunter. You keep Hunter.
Yeah, Hunter played. He's been playing well in some of these losses, by the way.
No, he was in the 6th man of the year conversation with them. They were pretty good.
He had 35 a couple nights ago.
Yep.
But yeah, that's the team I loathe. I don't loathe that team. I just loathe what's happening to them.
That's fair. Player that I loved, it's Tyrese Maxey. I mean, this guy, you think about all the stuff that he has been through the course of his career. I mean, he's been through the Ben Simmons stuff. He's been through the James Harden stuff. Now, obviously, all the Joel Embiid, does he play, does he not? Now you got, adding Paul George into the mix. You got all kinds of new personnel around you. And my God, he was obviously having to do it every night, but he was doing it, somewhat inefficiently because he was being tasked with carrying the load for this team, carrying the water every night. And now he just keeps on getting better and better and better at doing that and dealing with what defenses show at him. He is now averaging 27 points a game, 6 assists, and 3.5 rebounds. This week, he backed up his 43-point game against the Lakers with 30 and 8 against the Kings, and they ran all kinds of guys at him. They ran 2 at him over and over, and he just constantly made the right play, making everybody else better. And in that game, it ends up Ricky Council's in double digits, and Oubre's in double digits, and Paul George is in double digits, and Lowry's in double digits. And it's like, okay, we talked about like kind of the heliocentric guys and those guys that can make the right play when we were talking about Jokic, when we were talking about SGA. Maxey now is becoming that guy. Everybody's saying, okay, he's the one we've really got to deal with. And if you watch him, he's making the right play over and over again. And he now has 12 straight games where he scored more than 25. 7 of those are over 30 points, and 3 of those are 29 points. So you go back to, when that scoring tear got started, January 6th, only SGA has a higher points per game than Maxey.
Huh. I mean,
and 7 of those games, he's over 50% from the field. So, I mean, he's starting to do it even more efficiently. He has been just absolutely awesome, man.
it feels a little bit like remember when Jokic went into Washington and scored like 60 or whatever, and like you could tell it was like he didn't want to. I think this Maxey scoring streak feels a little like non-consensual. He's like, I don't want to do this. I would rather score 20 and be dishing the ball to PG and Joel Embiid. Like, I would rather be part of a cohesive team offense that wins basketball games instead of like the burden being on me basically this entire season to score 30 points or we don't win.
He is awesome.
He's awesome. And they won 4 in a row.
Awesome.
Like, I'm looking at the standings and I'm like, I think the Sixers are they're an 8 seed. They're in the 7-8 playing game at the end of this all.
With the Hawks thing falling apart, with the Jimmy
Hawks
Butler
falling
thing
apart,
in
the
flux.
Bulls falling apart, like the Heat, who knows what's going to happen with them when they get back. There's enough teams between them and like the 7 seed.
Yep.
Where like this whole Sixers season just feels like it's headed towards the playoffs and headed towards another like game 7 in the first round. That's just what it feels like.
I want to give a quick shout out because in the process of getting ready for this show and looking through all of the Maxey stuff, I'm reading this different Sixer stuff, and I want to give a shout out to the Liberty Ballers because in the course of it, I saw a graphic that Liberty Ballers had made about Eric Gordon, which made me laugh, and so it was worth mentioning. And they made a graphic, and it is Eric Gordon before and after his wisdom teeth surgery.
Oh,
and
interesting.
Before his wisdom teeth surgery, he was averaging 5 points a game, 36% from the field, 28% from 3.
Wisdom teeth holding back.
Wisdom teeth surgery, 9 points a game, 50% from the field, 49% from 3.
Oh, that's great.
Great. Wisdom teeth. Teeth make a huge difference.
So, quick personal question, Verno. This is just part of the experience of hosting the podcast, getting to know each other. I'm having my 4th kid in late March, if everything goes well. And there's been discussion around the Jacoby family about which one, the male or female partnership of adults in this family, is going to have an operation to ensure that we don't have a 5th child. And Mr. Gordon's wisdom teeth removal made me think about my own future. And should I get a vasectomy like everybody else does on that Wednesday or Thursday heading into March Madness?
No.
Why not? You get time off of work and you just lay down on the couch with ice on your balls and watch basketball.
I don't know. That is, I want to enjoy the tournament. You know what I mean?
I think that's the whole point.
No, I don't think
you've never heard of this before? The dudes get vasectomies?
Look, you're going to be watching the tournament anyway. To me, you save that for a time that you wouldn't normally say, hey, I'm out of pocket on this, right? Like,
it's like a get out of jail free card.
Yeah.
For like a wedding I don't want to go to.
Come on.
Or like some sort of like family vacation or something.
What I'm saying is, look, you have to, my opinion is this. When you then are a family man and then you've got kids, right? You have to divvy out the things that get you out of responsibility.
Yeah, this is a big one.
And to me, like, again, I can't speak to you, but it's always understood, like the NCAA tournament, right? Like, I'm not going to be helpful. Come on.
See, I don't love the first couple days.
What?
No, those aren't my favorite days.
The worst thing that has ever been said on this podcast.
I'm a Sweet 16 guy. Talk to me at the Sweet 16.
That is.
Oh, no, those
you're
first
gross.
couple days, too much going on.
No.
I'm looking for channels I've never used before.
What?
I'm like, HGTV has like Northeastern Illinois State.
I'm not kidding you.
Against Miami, Ohio, and I'm trying to find that. I don't even know what I'm gambling on. I can't even name players, but I bet $30 on them.
This is the worst take in the history of the Ringer. You should be on The View. You should be on The View.
Be on The View.
That's what you should do. You should go be on The View, and then you can say, hey, you know what I don't like? I don't like the first round of the NCAA tournament.
I don't like it.
What the F?
I like it. It's better than nothing. It's just not my favorite part of the tournament.
Okay,
I feel like it's a ton of mismatches. It's chaos. Everyone talks about these upsets we're going to get. We don't get upsets.
All right.
And I don't like the first couple days. I prefer the later rounds. Round of 32, round of 16.
Okay, horrendous. And then
I'm right. I am right. I like good basketball, not bad basketball.
I'm going to tell you this. You don't need to get snipped. You need to get your whole dick cut off because that is the worst thing I've ever heard in my life. You don't need your balls anymore. What have you become?
I don't like those 3 days.
It is terrible.
I prefer down to 32 teams, down to 16 teams.
Mortifyingly bad. It is a mortifyingly terrible thing.
For every buzzer beater those first 2 days, there's 15 20-point blowouts. Like, they're not good games. They're not.
Holy crap. Like, I still remember Bryce Drew. I still remember, I'm old now. And I still remember all of these moments that took place in those first couple of days. That's the days of the upsets.
You have way more memories of the later rounds of the tournament. You're lying.
No, I don't.
Yes, you do. Yes, you do.
No, I don't.
Yes, you do.
The upsets are the ones that live forever. Those are the ones that live forever.
No,
yes, they
the upsets are the ones that live for 48 hours until they lose the next game because they're overmatched.
If I say George Mason, if I say Florida Gulf Coast, if I say Valparaiso, if I say any of those schools, the first thing that comes to your mind is the NCAA tournament.
No.
Yes. You know that's true. You're now just being indignant. And cut your balls off and your dick and all of it. You don't need any of it. Because you're a disgrace. All right. The player that I loathed this week, it was one thing. It was one thing. When it was Jonte Porter.
I didn't get to do the guy I loved.
Oh, you didn't?
Yeah, since you came for me, I'm coming for you quickly. You know who the guy I loved is this week? DeAndre Ayton.
Wait. Wait.
Ayton.
The only thing worse than your last take is this.
I did this for you. I did this for you. DeAndre Ayton and the red hot Trailblazers. The Trailblazers and the Raptors just can't lose basketball games, and I do not understand it. I've stopped betting against those teams because they owe me money at this point. They could probably pay for me to have my dick cut off, pay for a flight to Thailand, and have it put back on with all the money that I've lost. I'm betting against these stupid teams that can't lose games. But not only did the Blazers beat the stupid Bucks, my guy DeAndre Ayton, one of the 17 centers that the Blazers inexplicably have, he had 21 and 14. He was 9 for 19 from the floor. And then last night, for no reason at all, they beat the Magic. My guy, DeAndre Ayton, 10 for 12 from the field.
Oh, God.
One was a 3. One of his misses. 22 points. And after the game, do you know who's having the big interview on the wood? Your guy, DeAndre Ayton. Here's what he had to say about the Blazing Blazers.
They all working on their three-point shot. They know they got bigs that can finish around the rim. And, you know, they just making sure they knock down the shots. Even if we get the offensive board, they ready to knock down the daggers. So, you know, it's a working process, and I just love it here, man. These dudes just really, you know, it's a lot of dudes just on the same mission as you, and they just working all together.
He loves it there. A lot of dudes on the same mission, and they're all working all together. Let's celebrate.
They're all trying to get traded.
The player I love this week, your guy, DeAndre Ayton.
Oh, God. Look, they are all the cute puppy at the edge of the gate going, pick me. They're all playing out of their mind. All right, get back to me after the trade deadline and see how much they're playing. Every one of those guys is playing cute puppy basketball, which is pick me, please trade for me. I promise I'm good. I'm just here.
There, at some point in the locker room, they're going to be like, hey, Time Lord, coach wants to see you in his office. And Time Lord's going to look around the rest of the locker room and be like, later!
Player that I loathe. Look, it was one thing if it was Jonte Porter. Please, God, no, Scary Terry. No, Scary Terry. So this story comes out yesterday about the investigation. The NBA says, hey, we investigated this long time back, but now the New York Eastern District, and you saw the tweets coming out where people were saying, hey, got a tip, Scary Terry's gonna basically fake an injury, and so take all of Terry's unders tonight, whatever. Like, look, everybody could just get past the Jonte Porter thing and be like, what an idiot. He was playing for the Raptors, and who cares? And
He's like a two-way player. He wasn't making that much money. It's sort of like it was insignificant.
He seems exactly like the kind of guy, if it were to happen,
yes,
that it could happen, right?
I mean, Terry Rozier's made millions and millions of dollars. You would not expect someone
millions of
so
dollars
financially secure to help their buddies make a few thousand. It doesn't make sense.
It would be absolutely insane. And especially now, one of the things that I do think is real, and I think that players feel this on a regular basis, I even saw Troy Aikman talking about this in reference to the NFL and how officials have come under a different level of scrutiny. And whether it is officiating, whether it is coaches, or whether it is individual players, the proliferation of legalized gambling has changed discourse in a massive, massive way. And that has happened more recently. That has been something that has taken place. I have watched it unfold over the course of the past year and a half in a way that it had not before. And in fact, to wit, there are times where I will look up a player and like I'll type in their name on like Twitter or whatever. And what you will find is in many cases, what I'm looking for is not people bitching about their lineup that night for their daily fantasy thing or their props that they had, or you just cost me this, or my parlay was one leg short because Tyler Hero, I had him over 3.5 threes or whatever. I mean, the amount of discourse about gambling on the games is crazy. And so, look, we've got to let this one play out, but I'm being very serious when I say I pray, no lie, that there is nothing to this.
Oh, God.
I know people have already pulled up the videos. I know people have already showed him where it's like, dude, that's a fake injury.
I didn't see anything damning in those videos. I watched all the, like, this is the game where
did it look like he hurt his foot, though? There's nothing that happened.
Faked an injury. But it's like, it's not sort of like red-handed stuff that's coming out. But the concern is this. The NBA investigated these claims and found nothing. And the feds investigated these claims and said, you know what? There's something to this. We got more to look into.
I know.
That is concerning.
We just got to pray that nothing comes out of it.
Yeah, I don't know what's going to happen there, but it'd be very, very, very concerning. And the idea that an NBA player making as much as they make would consider this, which I assume is really to help friends more than anything else, is very concerning. But it is that is something that I loathe. And like you, I'm really hoping this just goes away. Moving on. Player I loathe this week. This is bad, Verno. Okay. And I'm a bad person on the inside. You learn that about me over time. Like, I'm smiley and likable, but like I've got a negative soul that has a lot of hate in it. And some things just piss me off. And the player I loathe this week put out a promo for his new television show. Just play it.
I'm Anthony Davis. I'm always dominating on the court. But one thing you may not know about me, I love pranking people. So I grabbed some of the biggest athletes in the world to prank other athletes. Here we go. It's like Impractical Jokers, only a lot taller. No one is safe.
What?
What is that on?
Anthony Davis.
What is that going to be on?
It's I don't know. I'm not watching it.
Is that
Anthony
real?
Davis, one of the things you don't know about me, I love pranking people. No one knows that about you because it's not true. You're not Ashton Kutcher, Anthony Davis. No one has ever accused you of ever having a personality. You have never made me smile with anything that you've said. You've never even smiled yourself. As far as I'm concerned, there is no joy in your life whatsoever. I've never once heard an anecdote from a player, a fan, or a coach of like, oh, Anthony Davis, that guy loves practical jokes. Oh, he's like a regular George Clooney around here. Oh, the lengths that Anthony Davis will go to lift the morale in the locker room with a little prank is just, God, he's a legend for this. Anthony Davis, you are not a television host. You have no personality. You are a good basketball player. And I blame Clutch Sports because Clutch Sports signs Anthony Davis, brings him to Los Angeles, and they promise him that he's going to be a movie star. These are the same people that told LeBron James he could act. LeBron James couldn't even play a professional basketball player in Trainwreck. LeBron James couldn't play a basketball player in a movie. And now we've got Anthony Davis out here like he's Ashton Kutcher in Punk'd. When Ashton Kutcher is funny, he's got friends. He makes me smile. Anthony Davis, whoever told you that this was a good move for you, that this is how you were going to break into Hollywood, this is how you were going to start generational wealth-changing revenue streams moving forward, this is not you, Anthony Davis. You are not a practical joker. You are not a television host. You are not a comedian. You've never made me laugh. You've never even smiled yourself. I've never seen Anthony Davis laugh. Have you ever seen Anthony Davis laugh?
From the makers of the AD show, we present you Jason Tatum, stand-up comedian.
Kawhi Leonard.
Yeah. What a lot of people don't know about me.
Yeah, people don't know he's hilarious, but we've got a new late-night show launching on Amazon Prime, Kawhi and Friends. Not Kawhi. I hate this. I just hate that it's not Anthony Davis's fault. It's when he signs with Clutch and they say, we're not just about getting you your next contract in the NBA. We're going to build out your production company. We're going to build your brand. You're going to have a rap album. You're going to have a fashion line. What are you interested in? Oh, you like sloths? We're going to have a sloth ranch in your backyard. It's just over promising. And some stupid executive greenlit this and said Anthony Davis is the next Ashton Kutcher. It's not going to work. No one's going to watch this. It's not going to be funny, and it bothers me. That's the player I love this week.
Thing that I loved this week, all the trade talk heating up. I mean, look, we are a week away. Obviously, in the episode that we record next week will be post trade deadline, so we're less than a week away now. We had De'Aaron Fox. That one hit, and it caused a tremendous amount of conversation over the course of the last 5 or 6 days. We know the Jimmy Butler saga continues. I mean, that's 2 big contracts that could be moved. And you know that there's very few of these teams that got all their work done, your Knicks notwithstanding, in the offseason. I think there's a lot of them that look and they go, all right, we've got to, and I get it. People worry about they worry about the second apron and they worry about the finances of it all. I think this is going to be a wild and crazy active trade deadline, because there are a lot of teams that I think are going to be trying to augment their team, sitting there going, we are, and I said this a few weeks ago, we are a few players away. And we saw last year, Indiana got Pascal Siakam. It enabled them to reach a level that we did not think was possible with that team. And then the Mavericks, not the least of which, by making their additions of PJ Washington, and Daniel Gafford, at the trade deadline, enabled them to move to a level that made them NBA Finals participants. And so I do think that is going to be the case. I think we're going to have a tremendous amount of activity. It was not a super busy, super crazy offseason with free agency and trades. And so I think what we're going to have is in season. I think there's a lot of these teams, and we've talked about it a lot, where they sit there and go, okay, even if you say Oklahoma City and then there's everybody else, I think there's a lot of those teams that sit there and say, okay, we need to, here's our weakness. How can we help fix said weakness? And I think there's going to be a tremendous amount of activity. And now we've got huge names that are going to be involved. And those huge names could really change the trajectory of not only the franchises that they leave and go to, but also all the dominoes that fall because of it. Because when you're talking about salaries that are that big, you know that there are going to be a bunch of other players that are included. And sometimes those other players could be as impactful as the stars.
I think most trade deadlines in this period, there's a lot of discussion about what could happen. And usually about 20% of that stuff actually happens. And this year is the same. But outside of the biggest names, we've all discussed about where Jimmy Butler might go. The De'Aaron Fox news is interesting.
But those are two massive, massive names.
Not just names,
that
but
we
impactful
know,
players.
That we know are going to be going elsewhere.
We don't know that about
yes, they
both
are.
of them. But it's likely that they are. But I'll say this is I love the idea of the Spurs acquiring De'Aaron Fox. And if it's going to cost Castle, that's a conversation to be had. I love Castle, just like everybody else does. But, like, if you think about age, skill set, role that they play in the offense, I think De'Aaron Fox is going to be a great complement for whatever Wemby turns into. And an opportunity to acquire someone like this to play alongside Wemby that matches this well isn't going to come up very often. I would love to see the Spurs acquire him.
We agree.
I would love to
I think that would be an unbelievable
I would love to see that happen. And if you wait and, we're going to go back into the lottery, we're going to get another guy, you're just going to have more young rookies. Next thing you know, you've got Victor Wembanyama as like the vocal leader in the locker room, and he's like 23 years old. Like, I love De'Aaron Fox for that team, and I think that would make a big difference. I don't think Jimmy Butler is going to swing the needle that much wherever he ends up, but I look at the team, the Jazz, the John Collins, the Markkanen, and the Sexton. Like, I'm looking at those guys.
Walker Kessler's name always comes up.
If you could pry Herb Jones or Trey Murphy away from the Pelicans right now, that would be a move that would improve your team.
Well, Jones is out for the year, though. But
I know. Then get him. Then get him. I love him. We're gonna sprint to the finish here. Thing I love this week, it was my brother Jalen Rose's birthday yesterday. I believe he turned 34, and he gets recognized for a lot of the great things that he does. Jalen Rose Leadership Academy, everything he does for the city of Detroit. And one of the things that he really was appropriately celebrated for yesterday was a story that's been covered before, but the NBA did a really good job of celebrating Jalen Rose as the original Jalen. And they have pages and pages of stats. It's the most popular name in the NBA. There's 28 Jalens in the league, which is insane. I think second is like Chris with like 8. It's just wild. In the NFL, there's like 100 Jalens. Like, the name Jalen is everywhere, and he's my guy. And it was his birthday yesterday, and that is the thing that I loved in the NBA this week.
Thing that I loathed. Adam Silver was on with Dan Patrick and was talked about, maybe some out there ideas that might be considered. And, of course, this made headlines everywhere where it talked about Adam Silver maybe bringing up to the competition committee 10-minute quarters.
What are we doing?
I mean,
what are we doing?
And he brought up how, everybody else plays 10-minute quarters around the world, and it's something that maybe we would have to look into. And I understand with the records and everything, like, you can't just bypass that. You understand with the like every record ever, right, is then bastardized because you are fundamental. That would be like, you know what? I think the Masters is just going to be 14 holes this year, or let's just play 7 innings now in baseball. Like, there are things that can be augmented. The problem with your games are not that they're too long because you play too many minutes. It's
not the problem.
Fucking stop them all the time.
All the time. And have
all the time
4-minute reviews that take 10 seconds for everybody at home to come to a conclusion on. It's of the list of things, the list of levers that Adam Silver can pull to improve the NBA product, the length of the quarters,
it drove me crazy.
Even cross my mind. It wouldn't even cross my mind.
It sounds so like far down the list.
It was like when Vivek Ranadive said that we should have like a 100% of the time offensive player. And when Joe Mazzulla says we should bring back fighting and have a penalty box like hockey, those are less asinine ideas than going from 12-minute quarters to 10-minute quarters. My question for Adam Silver is this: what problem are you solving by doing that?
The other thing is this, Jacoby. Last year, they very obviously had the discussion, and then post-All-Star game, we saw the league called a completely different way.
Yes.
As we did in the playoffs. You know what? Because people don't like watching 50 and 60 and 70 attempts from the free throw line. And so they just stopped calling all those bumps. They stopped making it dead ball basketball all the time. They let the players play and had some level of physicality. And we all watched it and all said, this is way more fun to watch. This is way more entertaining. And then they went, and then they got their TV deal. And they went straight back to, you may tune in a game tonight and have to watch 68 free throws being shot.
I mean, like, the problem isn't less minutes per game.
Oh my God.
It's less games per season, and everybody knows it. That is the answer, Adam Silver.
And if you want to fix
from
in-game
12-minute quarters to 10-minute quarters, it's from 82 games to 56 games. That's what it is.
Crazy. All right. So I loathe that. What's your last one?
Here's the thing I loathe. And it is bringing up my complicated history with this human being who I love so much. And I've been harsh on. But last night in Washington, a gentleman took the line during garbage time. And here is how the Wizards crowd, with all of their bobbleheads in their closets, celebrated Bronny James going to the free throw line.
Bronny James made 2 free throws.
How can you loathe that?
I've always had a statement that a motto that I live by, which is you can be mean if you're funny, right? So this does pass that test. It's funny and it's mean. Fine. But I watched Bronny's face as he got the ball and they were chanting MVP. He was sad.
Oh,
he shook his head a little bit. And it made me sad. He's a young man. He's trying his best. He didn't ask to be LeBron James's son. He didn't ask to be named LeBron James. He didn't ask to be drafted by the Lakers.
Are you
serious? He didn't ask for all of this scrutiny. He's just a young kid, and he's just trying to make his way in the world and figure out who he is and what he's going to do with his life. And he goes to the line. He gets mocked by 18,000 people. There's probably only 8,000 people left at that point. But it made me sad, and I hated it. I'm going to try to be nice to Bronny moving forward.
Wow, you capped it off with one last just horrendous take. That was objectively hilarious. And
you think that was worse than the first two?
You being the stick in the mud sitting there going, you know what? It just kind of makes me sad that they're chanting MVP.
It does. Oh, sorry for having a heart being empathetic
Bronny James
about the human condition.
And the crowd chanting MVP is objectively funny.
It's funny. Stop. I say you can be mean if you're funny, but it made me. You can't listen. You can say I have a horrendous take, but you can't deny my feelings. Okay?
Yes,
acknowledge my feelings, Chris Vernon. I felt bad for the kid.
I'm not your wife. I'm not your wife.
Acknowledge my feelings.
I don't
acknowledge
care.
my feelings.
I don't care.
Acknowledge them.
You're an adult.
I don't like the first 2 games of the tournament. All right, the first 2 days aren't what they're cracked up to be. Overlapping games. Right. I'm on USA West, TNT East.
I'm not kidding.
HGTV.
This show should have ended easily a half hour ago. Easily.
Well, as long as
it would have saved me all manner of stress.
All right. I'm going to go get my dick and my balls cut off per your instructions.
Thank you to Jesse Loathes, our executive producer, as always. Jacoby, I'll talk to you next week.